up next, we have got Jack Rust, and he's going to tell us how to get the most out of your product manager. That'll be very interesting, and we'd love to hear more. So Jack, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, here I am. Someone let me know that you can hear me and see the slides.
Yep, that looks good. Perfect,
thank you. Thanks everyone for joining to listen in. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to talking to you all. I'm Jack Rust. I'm a product manager at PageUp. I was once a software developer, and about 3 years ago I moved across to product. This talk is really the things that I've learned over the last 3 years that I think would have been useful to software developer Jack, and hopefully they're useful to you. For the purposes of this talk, it doesn't really matter whether we're talking about a product manager, a product owner, a BA, a project manager, whoever it might be in your team. The person I'm talking about is the one who's responsible to the business for adding value to a product, for creating value, and the person who's responsible to the team for representing the business and the client interests. So whoever that is on your team, whatever their title, I'm going to be using the word PM a lot, but whoever it is, it doesn't really matter what their job title is. That's who I'm talking about. Quick disclaimer before we get into it, I'm giving advice on how to work with your PM. Everybody's different, every company is different, every team's different, so obviously your mileage may vary with this advice. If you have a really great PM and they're already doing everything you could possibly ask of them, then that's great. Sit back and relax and sit in that glow as you enjoy the presentation, and please tell them tomorrow how great they are. If, on the other hand, your PM is a little more difficult to work with and this advice isn't as approachable because of that, please hit me up on Twitter or LinkedIn or something afterwards. I'd love to hear more about that scenario and whether I can help at all. And one more quick disclaimer before I get into it, because I'd love to eat up a 10-minute talk with disclaimers. I'm going to be asking you to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting in this relationship, or that's how it's going to seem from this presentation. The reason it's going to feel that way is because you're the people in front of me, you're the people who I'm talking to right now. And I would be asking equally of PMs to do the heavy lifting if I was talking to a group of them. So this can sometimes come across as me telling you what you should do to make the PM's life easier, but that's not my intention at all. Hopefully you take this in the spirit it's given, which is things that you can do to get the most out of your PM, because it's not a zero-sum game. By getting the most out of your PM, you're making your own life easier, and it might make their life easier as well. And hopefully over time, they learn from the way you're interacting with them, and they become a better and better resource for you and your team. So diving into it, my first piece of advice is, as I mentioned, PMs are all about value. They're about delivering value to the product or to the users. And so if you have an idea that you want to put to your PM, even if it's as small as a tweak to a story, or if it's a brand new initiative that you think should be played or shouldn't be played, the best way to put that idea to them is in terms of the value that that brings to the product or the product area. The PMs should be meeting you more than halfway on this. Really, they should be looking to understand what you're putting to them in terms of value. But PMs are people, and people have different skills. So to get best results with a PM, to get them to understand and to really get on board with your ideas, pitch it to them in terms of value. And value doesn't need to mean dollar figures. As much as it often is, it doesn't need to be dollar figures. You can talk to them in terms of wasted time or effort. You can talk to them in terms of potential support tickets or the cost of working around a problem in future. That's all stuff that PMs care about as well. And if you pitch it to them in that way, I think you'll find you get better results in those conversations. This here is a product delivery triangle. You might have seen something similar in textbooks or at uni or wherever else. Around the outside of the triangle, we've got quality, speed of delivery, and scope, and inside we have cost. What this is showing is all the different levers we can pull when we're running a project, when we're trying to deliver product to market. We can influence any one of these things. We can influence multiple of them, But the reason it's a triangle is because if you set any 3 of these variables, the 4th one is determined by those other 3. You can't control all 4 at once. So this is a useful concept at the start of an initiative to talk about what's variable and what isn't in a project. The specific scenario where I've seen this struggle is at the start of a lot of agile projects, the cost is more or less fixed. That's the team, and the team tends not to change too much in size over the course of an initiative. Scope shouldn't be set in stone, but the breadth of it does tend to get set pretty quickly. We scale it down as much as possible. We get locked into our ideas, and we tend not to let that change. And speed of delivery always has pressure to improve. We're always trying to increase the speed of delivery, increase the speed to market. The result of setting those 3 things is that quality is the one that dangles. Quality is the one that's fixed based on what's left over. And the problem with that is that we don't intend that to be the case most of the time. We just allow it to dangle because we assume we're always building high quality products. But without saying it outright, that assumption can sometimes get lost, and everybody has their own idea about what we're working to. So my advice from this slide is please openly talk in terms of these trade-offs. You can do this with the triangle. You can also do slider workshops if you want to Google that later. The point is to not leave these things unsaid. And if you feel like you're being asked to sacrifice quality for speed of delivery, that might be the case. But my advice is ask it outright, ask it openly. Are we sacrificing quality for speed of delivery in this case? And see what the answer is, have that conversation. It'll be an awkward conversation, but I promise the rest of the initiative will go smoother for it. Estimates are sometimes useful in the aggregate. Some of us are lucky enough to work in a more no estimates sort of world, but sometimes there are deadlines. Sometimes you need to set when things will be done, and estimates can help you get there. An individual estimate is almost always wrong. It's an estimate. It's not meant to be perfectly correct. In the aggregate, that evens out, and you can do things with that data. Occasionally, though, a PM will ask you for an individual estimate on a specific story or group of stories or whatever it is. And there's legitimate reasons that they might do that. They might need to update a stakeholder on a change to the plan of delivery, or it might be more of a value discussion. They might be asking how long something will take so they can trade it off against the value it will be delivering and then decide whether it's still worth doing. My advice to you is not to give a specific estimate in those cases. When it's just a single story or group of stories in isolation, don't give a specific estimate because it's not helpful. PMs should take that into account and ask better questions. But when they don't, my advice is to answer that question in terms of a scale. Rather than saying it'll take 2 weeks, say, well, it'll take weeks, not days, just so you know. That gives your PM a margin for error and also allows you a bit of freedom in not knowing for sure how long something is going to take, because we don't. So that's a good way to let you know how uncertain we are about the estimate. So talk in terms of hours, days, weeks, months, quarters, whatever it is, rather than a specific estimate. The other thing that you can do is you can actually ask for an estimate from your PM as well. Don't ask them for an estimate of how long something will take. Please don't. Sometimes PMs like to do this and they shouldn't. But you can ask for them an estimate of value. What a PM can estimate for you is how long they think something is worth taking, how long they would be willing for the team to spend on working on something before it's not valuable anymore. And that can be useful. That can simplify the estimate question. If they're asking you how long something will take for a value decision, then you can say, how long would you be willing for us to spend on it before it becomes not valuable? If they say it's 2 weeks, then your estimate just needs to be, is it higher than 2 weeks or lower than 2 weeks? And that sort of simplifies that conversation, and you can go from there. And last thing, I'm already running out of time. The last thing that I would say to you is this phrase delivery risk can be super powerful with your PM. Please don't overuse it. I would hate to be responsible for turning this into a buzzword. But if you need your product manager's attention on a problem, if you just tell them about the problem, PMs hear problems all the time. We all do every day. And we often lack the context for what's a big problem, what's a small problem, what can be solved in a couple of days, couple of hours work versus what's going to set the project in a different direction for months. So when you think that you've found a problem that is going to impact the delivery of the initiative, I strongly recommend using the phrase delivery risk. You'll find your product manager's ears perk up and suddenly they're very interested in what you have to say. So please use it sparingly, but it's a useful tool to have in the back pocket. So to recap quickly, talk to your PM in terms of value. That's how they like to talk, and it really helps you get to the point of the matter. Talk in terms of trade-offs between the different things like quality and speed of delivery. Use scale estimates instead of specific estimates, particularly when you're talking about a specific story or group of stories. You can ask your PM to estimate value as well in terms of how long they'd be willing to spend on something. And you can use the phrase delivery risk to get your PM's attention, but please use it sparingly. And my last point before I sign off, PMs aren't so bad. We're all right people. I know we can get in the way sometimes, but we're trying to be helpful. So help us be helpful. Thank you. If you have any feedback on this, I would love to hear it. So hit me up on Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever you can find me. Thanks.
Woo! All the claps are coming in now too. This is great.